Welcome to the Forge Tabletop. Today we have Drukari versus Nurgle Deamons. So let's go ahead and check out the army.
And if you like the battle report, like the video if you like the video, comment if you want to comment, share if you want to share it, and stay tuned for the very end for our new recap at the end of the game. Alright, I have... how much is this? 1,995 points of Nurgle. Now, originally I was going to play Guard, but there was some weird bug with Yellow Scribe, and I couldn't actually play the army. And so, time was ticking, so I went with something that I was very familiar with. So this is a variation of my Nurgle army. I do have all these models, except one. But, so I have 3 Great Unclean ones, Rodigus, my Warlord, Great Unclean one with the big sword, Endless Gift, and a support Great Unclean one. I have a Sloppity Bile Piper, which gives movement bonuses to the squad he's in. We have the Poxbringer, which allows his squad to crit on a 5-up to hit. And he also has a natural 5-up Feel No Pain, which is actually surprising. We have Epidemius, which is a great support and also strong melee champion. We this time do not have our Horticulus Slimex, and we have the same amount of Beasts of Nurgle, so we broke them up into 3 units, 1 of 2 and 2 of 1. 3 units of Nurglings, the MVPs of the game, 3 units of Plague Bearers, and 2 units of Plague Drones. And that is 2,000 points of Nurgle Deamons.
Alright, you guys, so we have 2,000 points of Drukari, or Dark Eldar as I first knew them. And so I wanted to kind of test out a range of things and things that I remember working from 9th edition. And so that's kind of like what my army is kind of based around. Now they're cheap. Dark Eldar are pretty cheap as far as units go, so I was actually able to take a nice range of stuff. So you don't need to take the like a real space raid where it lets you have 3 of the different types of units, the Archons, the Homunculus, and the Witches. So you can just take them as is without any rules or anything like that. So Lilith Hesprax is my Warlord, and then I have a Homunculus leading a group of Racks, and an Archon with some Kabalite Warriors. I have some Mandrakes, another Kabalite Warrior squad. Both of them will have Raiders, just because that's what you do, or at least 9th edition. I had 2 squads of Hellions, a squad of Grotesques, some Reavers, a couple Taluses, and 3 squads of Scourges. I always like the Scourges, they're a little fragile, but I'm going to try and fly around with them and see what I can do with them this time. So I kind of took a little bit of most of the stuff. There's some units I didn't quite get to take, but we will see how we go. So just kind of a mobile army with kind of a mix of range and really, really close combat damage. They are fragile, but he's Nurgle, so he doesn't really have shooting. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Right, so for the mission today, we have Sweeping Engagement as our deployment, Scrambler Fields, which basically no deployment onto any objective, and Priority Targets, which is basically control 2 objectives, and you score 10 per turn. At the end of the game, you score up to 15 for 3 objectives, and that is the mission. Alright, so for secondaries, I chose, for Nurgle Deamons, Tactical. I have a bunch of chaff and a bunch of extra simple units with this variation, and so I figure that Tactical I'll have the best chance of completing. What about you?
So I actually picked fixed objectives, behind enemy lines, and cleanse. So I have super mobile units, and I have a lot of units. So behind enemy lines, I'm pretty sure I could literally just drop in, because I think I have enough deep strike units to do that. And so I think that one might be pretty easy to do. I don't know. And then cleanse, I have enough units that I could probably do this, and I think it might be okay. So I'm going to give that a go. That's pretty much it. Just tacticals. I may not be able to pull them off just because of my type of army. But with fixed, I can pick them, and they suit my army better, I think. So we'll see.
Alright, so for deployment, I had no idea what I was dealing with, so I essentially just played my own game. So my 2 Great Unclean Ones are in reserves. Each character is in a squad, and so my overall idea was to screen. That's pretty much it, and to be poised to take 2 objectives as needed, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I mean that's literally it. So essentially, I placed all of my guys as defensively as possible. Some are less defensible, but they're pretty tanky. Radagast is safe. Units are either screening, like the Nurglings, or poised to take objectives, maybe. And yeah, and we'll see how this game goes. So what about you?
Yeah, so I have a pretty mobile army, so I wasn't super concerned where to place them. I wasn't sure where you were placing your stuff, so I placed a couple of units ready to do basically secondaries, but then the rest of them was just kind of like spreading around, trying to give room for the more or less mobile things. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't have like a tremendous plan because with Dark Eldar they're super mobile. So, but I had some more maybe heavy duty units in probably the more contestable objective areas to try and see if they can hold stuff or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, so I didn't have a huge plan with them, but yeah.
All right. So who goes first? Who goes second? You start this off then this time.
Well, if I go first, it would allow me to do the cleanse secondary, so I'd be able to get points this turn. I might be able to do it in the next turn, I don't know. I just basically have to have something not in combat to do it, but and then it would allow me to kind of take some pot shots at stuff, and yeah, so I think probably going first. Now, going second wouldn't be the worst either, though, because I'm pretty sure, being Nurgle, you have nothing that can actually charge me. Maybe these plague drones, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't think it would be the worst to go second either. But, I don't know. Yeah, so I think I want to go first. Or maybe second. Maybe, yeah, actually, I don't know. I don't know.
Alright, so for me, essentially, I would prefer to go second. If I go first, as far as... So, what I can tell so far of Nurgle, playing him repeatedly as my main army, is he's better as a counter-puncher. That's his most offensive. So if you go first, you basically will offer me targets to potentially charge, or I will be able to, at this very early point in game, dictate where my forces push out to. And so, essentially, I'd want to go second. It also has a lot of strategic value for my reserves and things like that. I would want to do that so I can basically just get onto you or fight you, essentially. Basically, I can counteract your movements if I go second. If I go first, I'm very open to counter charges and getting shot with your very high damage weapons. And so, overall, I would want to go second. If I go first, I'm going to play it very defensively and cagey to set up for something in the future. Alright then, so that's about it. So, right, let's see how it goes.
What the heck?
Which dice is which? I lost it for a second.
This one's mine. They literally collided in roll and they stopped each other.
Okay.
But you got a 3.
Alright, Demons turn 1 then. Alright, for the beginning of my turn, I drew Secure No Man's Land and Assassination. Assassination is not happening now. So essentially what's going to happen is my overall plan is, because I went first, and like I said, Nurgle is more of a counter puncher, I'm essentially willing to give up my first turn, a lot of strategic movement and stuff, in order to screw over my opponent maybe in a future turn. So I place very defensively, move my things around in a certain way to avoid more firepower or danger, place my guys where they can't be seen, essentially. I did use my plague drones to get onto one of the points. That's fine. Orange plague drones took the top point, so I will take Secure No Man's Land, I think. Shoot, I can't remember. Then I have Nurgling swarms moved up to be out of line of sight and stuff. Some went for screening. Epidemius moved on to the home point. Green plague bearers, essentially where they are, they can't be seen even though they're a terrain piece. True line, the walls are too big. Rotigus moved into a strategic position. Yellow beasts of Nurgle moved in as well. My yellow plague drones ran, got a 6. Basically bunched together with my 2 other beasts of Nurgle and Nurglings there in the defensive position. And yeah, and I'm trying to play as strategic as possible. Alright, I misunderstood No Man's Land. I basically... I had to control 2. Well. Assassination I will discard for 1 CP because he has 3 characters. They're so far away. I don't know when I'd be able to kill them, so I'm going to focus on what I can gain in relatively short order. And that is my first turn.
Alright, you guys, so basically I created a couple different lines here. So some of the tougher units moving forward to kind of partner up and pair off with some of the weaker units, or some of the objective units, for instance. And then, what was I going to say? Then, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. So a lot of my shootier units kind of moved around and reorganized to better see things, to shoot things. And then, I want to say that was really it. I moved on to all 3 of the middle No Man's Land objectives, and hopefully that will help me. But yeah, so we'll see what happens in the rest of the turn. But movement, I was just a line up. Alright, you guys, so for the shooting phase, a little bit happened. So I guess it'd be your guys' right side, shot at his Nurglings that were creeping around with the beasts and the drones.
Yeah.
And so the raider so the Talos shot, but he missed everything. And then we're not actually sure he had full line of sight, but it didn't end up mattering because he missed everything. The raider shot, and it was actually able to kill off the 3 Nurglings because of all the guys inside and the raider's Dark Lance itself, and them only having a 6-up invuln, which did not help them, I think, a single time. And then the middle squads actually weren't really able to shoot at anything that either didn't have range or didn't have line of sight, or in the case of the Racks, didn't have guns. So my Reavers shot at his plague drones coming up on the left middle there, as did the Talos, the Ravager, and the Mandrakes. And so I was able to kill off 1 plague drone and do 2 damage to another plague drone. Which was not bad. And then my Scourges with the Dark Lances sitting on the building in the middle shot at Rotigus, but they missed 3 and he saved 1. So nothing happened essentially there. But then they're able to make a 6-inch move after they finished shooting. So they were able to scoot back for safety, I think, but I don't think he actually could have gotten to them. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Anyway, but so that was my shooting phase. And I had a couple of long shots, and so I figured I'd give the long shots a go because honestly, you never know. Basically, they all needed 12s though, so statistically we knew. But anyway, so the witches tried to charge the Nurglings, which now thinking about it, they ran, so they actually weren't able to, but they failed anyway. Anyway. I forgot that they ran because I rolled a 1, so they ran, but they didn't really run, you know. Then my Grotesques tried to charge his Beast of Nurgle. They failed. They also needed a 12. The Talos tried to charge his Plague Drones. He actually only needed an 11, but I rolled a 3, if memory serves, so, you know. And then the Mandrakes actually only needed a 5 to charge his Plague Drones. They actually failed with a 4. So I spent a command point to reroll because that was the only one I was actually like trying to get in. So I was surprised when they failed, given how easy the charge was. But anyway, not important. So I rerolled it, and they got in with a 7, and yeah, so that was nice. Yeah, that was the charge phase. All right, you guys. So my Mandrakes swung, and they are actually, even though they needed 5s, 3s and 5s, but 5s to wound. They were able to do 3 damage, so 5 went through, I believe, 5 or 6, and he saved about half of them, but one of them had 3 wounds left, so they're actually able to kill off an entire plague drone by themselves. And then the last one swung, and he was only able to actually kill 1, so another wound went through, but I saved it with their 5-up invuln. And so, yeah, that was the fight phase, 1 for 1, I guess. you guys. So for points, I was able to get my secondary mission cleanse. Since I only need 2 to do it, I was able to get the full 4 points for it. Now, obviously, being the first turn, there is no primary points, and I did not get behind enemy lines because it's the first turn. So yeah, but so I guess decent. I was able to take the 3 No Man's Land objectives currently. We'll see what happens, but so I'm at a good spot, even though I can only get points for 2 of them until the final battle round. So technically I don't need 1, but anyway. So yeah, so that was my turn. Pretty good on points, I guess, and position.
Alright, so for the movement phase, first my Plague Drone had to take a leadership test. He passed it. Then afterwards, movement. So my Beast of Nurgle moved on to the center objective. Plague Drones moved on as well. I had my red squad of Plague Bears run onto the objective because they couldn't get anywhere nearby. They rolled a 6. Now here's a very important thing. I forgot, didn't mention it, but at the end of my opponent's turn, there was just no place to do it. I spent 1 CP to remove my yellow Beast of Nurgle and yellow Nurgling Swarm that was on the bottom right back into reserves so they can deep strike. I believe that's called Realm of Chaos. Yeah. And so in this turn, that's why they're not there. And so movement phase wise, now my Green Plague Bear squad had Sloppity Bile Piper, which gives them +1 to move, so they have 6-inch moves, and they can reroll advance. So they ended up with a 4-inch advance, and I needed to get 5 bodies onto the point in order to take it from my opponent and get Realm of Chaos. That ultimately failed by just a little bit. Plague Drone and Plague Bears have 2 OC, but if I had Spoilpox Scriven, they would have counted as 3 OC, so that would have been different. But essentially, I was not able to get Realm of Chaos, so I don't get any of the deep strike buffs. And so Rodigus also ran up the middle, or up the top on the left, so to try to do something. Apart from that, yeah, and then at the end of my turn, Deep Strikes came in. I did not bring in my Great and Clean ones. Instead, I brought in the Nurglings and the Beast of Nurgle on the top right. Now, because of the mission rules, I cannot Deep Strike onto an objective, so I don't have it yet, but we'll see what happens. And that was my turn, or my movement phase. So for the shooting phase, the only one that can shoot is the Plague Drones, so they fired at the Grotesques. And so essentially what happens is they have D3 shots, each of them. I got 4 shots, all hit, 2 were lethal hits, and 1 wounded. And they did 1 damage, because they had a 5 of Feel No Pain, which is fine, because the real objective is my entire army now gets reroll to wound on them till the end of this turn. And that is the shooting phase. So, I started off with the unlikely rolls, the yellow Beast of Nurgle into his red Raider squad, and they flopped it. Not even going to bother with the Nurglings. There's no point in charging them in, they'll just die. So then, blue Beast of Nurgle charged the Grotesques, made it on a 6. Green Beast of Nurgle charged the Grotesques, made it in on 11. The Plague Drones made it in on like an 8 or something against the Reavers. And then after that, so I had to make a decision, the Green Plague Bears or Rodigus, to charge the Mandrakes, so I decided Rodigus would be better. So I spent 1 CP to give him the ability to advance and charge, because it's in the charge phase, and it doesn't specify at the beginning. And essentially, according to pre-measuring and stuff, I would have to roll a 6 to get within 1 inch of him. Within 1 inch of the squad to get him, and so I rolled a 9, so he was able to successfully get into combat. And that was the charge phase. Although I did fail the first one, I had to spend another CP, so I spent 2 CP to get Rodigus in the fight. And that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the fight phase. So for starters, my opponent spent 1 CP to give the Grotesques this -1 to wound. But luckily I had reroll to wounds on him from the Plague Drones earlier. So since he couldn't interrupt, I took my both squads of Beasts of Nurgle, the blue and green, and had them roll together. And basically, I did like 6 wounds to him, and then he rolled a bunch of 5 up Feel No Pains. I did a bunch of devastating wounds as well. And so essentially, I only was able to finish off 1, doing 3 damage to him. That was terrible, but that 1 CP, I guess, helped a lot. Then my Plague Drone swung on the Reavers. These guys are strategically useful for their movement, their ability to apply reroll to wounds onto enemies, but they suck in combat. I killed one guy. Then Rotigus swung next, and so at the beginning of the fight phase, he selects one enemy unit that he can see like within 18 inches, and every Nurgle guy that swings on him gets 1 extra damage against that squad, which did not come into play here. So Rotigus swung with his multi-attack, or his sweep attack, which is 14 attacks. He missed like 6 of them, 6 ones, he needed 2s, 4 lethal hits, and then the rest he was able to wound a bunch, and so he killed pretty much all of them except for 4. Then it was his turn to swing back. His Night Fiend swung on my Plague Drone, nearly killed it. He has 1 wound left. His Reavers did nothing against my Plague Drones because I saved them all. Then his Grotesques all swung on my Green Beast of Nurgle, and only 2 wounds went through because I'm Toughness 9 and he's Strength 5. And even though they were damaged 2, I didn't bother to roll them because he'll just regenerate at the end, so there's no point. And that was the fight phase. So for points, I did get 5 points for primary. I controlled my home. Secure No Man's Land. I successfully got this because I now control 2 No Man's Land. Tempting target. My opponent chose the top left one where Rotigus was nearby, and so I took it. So that was easy. And that was my turn. A pretty decent turnaround, but we'll see what happens.
You guys, so a good bit of stuff happened. So first off, my what do I even start with? Okay, so the right side. So my purple raider moved up basically into his deployment zone to get better angles and shots on stuff, but also to be in his deployment zone. Then my Talos moved on towards his Beast of Nurgle in the middle, as did Lilith and her squad, but they rolled a 6, so they actually were able to really book it. The Racks moved up and around, so they moved their 7 inches. The Grotesques and the Reavers actually moved out of combat. Then I'm trying to think, where did I go next? My yellow Talos moved towards his green Plague Bearers, and my green Hellions moved basically past Rotigus, also into his deployment zone. Then my Ravager scooted back basically to get a better look at Rotigus, to blow his brains out. And then my red Raider basically moved back a little bit to basically have a better view of the Beast of Nurgle and the Nurgling swarms, since that is a squad of Beasts of Nurgle. And then my Scourges with the Dark Lances jumped around a little bit into the cover across. And I believe that is the movement phase. Happened. I'll see if I can remember all of them. So I believe I actually started off with my Ravager shooting into Rotigus. He actually missed everything. Literally not even a wound. So then my Hellions shot at his blue Plague Bearers in the back. I think they actually took out 2, which is pretty nice. Then the Talos shot at the green Plague Bearers, and he did nothing. And then I believe I jumped around to some of the Scourges. So the green Scourges shot at his Plague Bearer squad, killing off a small chunk of them. Then the red Scourge squad shot at the Plague Bearer squad and also took out more of them. And then the Raider and everyone inside shot at them, killing off the squad, but leaving the character left. And then who shot next? Then the Talos shot at the blue Beast of Nurgle, which looks like it took no damage?
It did. I just healed it back up because it's the end of the phase.
Oh, it's at the end of a phase. I thought it was at the end of the turn. Oh, geez, that's unfortunate. Okay, well. So the Talos shot, I think he actually did a little bit of damage. I think he did 3 damage to it.
Yeah. And
then the Witches shot at it, and they did 1 more wound. So he took 4 damage. The Homunculus shot at it as well. He shot at the plague bearers, so he killed one of those guys as well. And then the blue scourges shot at his yellow plague drone squad, and they actually were able to kill it off to the wound, the entire squad, which was impressive. I was not expecting it, but I'm glad that it happened, obviously. And then the red raider shot at his yellow beast of Nurgle, and he was able to kill off one of them, but the other one, I think it only took like a single wound or something. So mixed results in shooting. There was some really good shooting, and then there was some not so great shooting, but I think it was a good shooting phase as a whole. Alright, you guys, so for the charge phase, the yellow Talos charged into the green plague bearers. Unsurprising, he made it in, because he only needed like a 2. The green Hellions charged his Nurglings in his home base area. They needed like a 5 or something. They got a 6, so they were able to quite snugly get in. Hopefully they'll actually do something, but we'll find out. And then my next charge was my Rax into his Poxbringer and both of his Beasts of Nurgle in the middle. Now they actually failed. They needed a 7. And so that was not great because I needed that command point for the witches to actually charge in. But because of where they were at, they actually needed to get out of the way, I believe. So that was unfortunate. So I spent a command point for them to reroll the charge. I actually rolled a 10, so they were actually able to get in there quite well. And so we'll see how they survive. But yeah, and so that was my only charge, or my last charge. And so that was the charge phase. All right, you guys. So I had 3 charges that went through. So I started with the Rex in the middle because he had 2 points to interrupt, and that seemed like if there was a point to interrupt, that would have been it. So I started in the middle, and so I had my Homunculus and 5 Rex swing on the Poxbringer, which I was able to take out. Kind of just barely, but anyway. And then the other 5 swung on his blue beast of Nurgle, and I'm pretty sure they actually did nothing there. But I was able to kill off the character in the middle. He then interrupted with his Plague Bearer swinging on my Talos. He did 3 damage to it. And then the Talos swung... Or no, then the Hellions swung... No, what did I do? Yeah, because you can't interrupt. Okay, yeah. So I swung with the Talos, and I think he only killed... 2, yeah, with his macro scalpels. And then my Hellion swung, and they actually were able to wipe the squad that he had, the 3 Nurglings. And then he was able to swing back, so he swung with his bird. What is it? Plague drone. There you go. Sorry, not a bird. On my Mandrakes in the middle, he killed 1, and then the Mandrakes actually swung back and finished off that Plague drone, so he has no more Plague drones on the field. And then he swung back with his 2 Beasts of Nurgle, killing off 2 of my Racks in the middle. And yeah, so that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, I had the full 10 on primaries, because you can only score from 2 objectives until the final turn, which then it'll be 3. And then behind enemy lines, I actually have the full points for, which is 4 points. And then cleanse, because I only had only one objective at the beginning in the shooting phase. I was only able to do it on 1, so I only got 2 points there. But hopefully that will improve as the game goes on. So yeah, but anyway, so I was able to get actually a pretty decent amount of points in 1 turn, 16 points, that's not bad. And so we'll see what happens from here, but I think all in all this was a relatively good round for me.
Right, my turn. The third turn, extend battle lines and storm hostile objective for what I drew, which is perfect. Extend battle lines, have my home, and have no man's land, and then storm hostile objective, take one of his. At this turn, I control the back objective. Well, I will just have to move like 1 inch over with my Beast of Nurgle. So in this turn, here's what happened. Rodigus moves around to be poised to finish off the Mandrakes and to shoot at the Hellions. Plague Bearers naturally have sticky objectives, so Epidemius is going to move to intercept the Hellions. My Beast of Nurgle moves on to the point, and my Nurgling Swarm does as well, and with that, I've just completed both my secondary objectives. Alright. And now, that unless a miracle happens for my opponent, the Talos kills like everything, but that's not happening. Alright, now apart from that, then my Great Unclean Ones come in. The green one comes up top, north of the Grotesques, and my Warlord comes in at the bottom, in line of sight with all these other cretins and stuff like that. And I spend 1 CP for my Beast of Nurgle and Nurgling Swarms to turn his home objective into a sticky objective for me. And that was my movement phase. So for the shooting phase, first Rotigus mag dumps the Heliarchs with his Stream of Brackish Filth, wipes out all but one. Then the green Great Unclean One fires his Putrid Vomit at the Grotesques, does 2 wounds. Then the Great Unclean One fires his Plague Flail into the blue squad and the Putrid Vomit into the red squad. Putrid Vomit takes 3 of them out, and then the Plague Flail fails to do anything because he saves it. And that was the shooting phase. Right, so for charges, Rotigus goes first, charged into the Orange Mandrakes, gets in easily. Then the Great Unclean One, blue, charges the Scourges. He rolls a 9, and he parks himself close to everything else as well. Then green Great Unclean One charges the Grotesques, makes it in. Then Epidemus and his squad charges the surviving Heliarch, and that was the charge phase. Oh yeah, and my Yellow Beast of Nurgle charged the Grotesques, but he failed. Alright, so for the fight phase, quite a lot happened. So first, Rotigus, since he couldn't interrupt me, I swung with him, and he just deleted the squad. And he put
Mandrakes.
and put +1 damage on the Talos. And then Epidemus soloed that one flyer guy, no problem. Then moving on, the Great Unclean One up top killed 1 Grotesque, because my opponent rolled really well and saves. My Great Unclean One on the bottom deleted the entire blue squad of his, whatever those things were. Then after that, he just piled into the rest of the Scourges, not really worried about them hurting him. And after that, then he swung back. He had his Rax swing on my Beast of Nurgle. Did nothing. Or, well, they did something, but like it didn't matter because it wasn't 7 wounds on any of them. My Beast of Nurgle swung back and killed a total of 2 of them. His Talos swung on my green Plague Bearer squad and wiped them out all the way down to the character and the Plague Bearer, the single Plague Bearer. Then after that, his Scourges all swung on my Great Unclean One, did nothing. Yeah, and his Grotesque swung on my Great Unclean One and did 2 wounds to it. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for the battle, extend battle lines, I got that because I have a home objective and a no man's land. Storm hostile objective, took his back line, so I got that. And I have 10 for primary, so I had a big point swing, and that was my 3rd turn.
Alright, you guys. So, for movement, a couple of things. One, my 2 Scourges squads left combat with a Great Unclean One, and they moved deeper into his base, as did my Purple Raider with the guys inside. Then my Purple Talos actually moved up towards that Great Unclean One. Then my Witches with Lilith moved towards the green Great Unclean One. And my Grotesque left combat there. My blue Reavers actually moved on to that middle objective as well. And my Ravager basically just rotated. It didn't actually really do anything. And I believe that was all of my movement. Yeah, so that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, the Ravager I started with into his green Great Unclean One, and he did literally nothing. Missed everything. Then my Talos shot at the green squad he's in combat with and killed the 1 Plague Bearer. And then Lilith and her squad shot at the Great Unclean One. They did nothing, unsurprisingly. The Purple Talos shot at the red Great Unclean One, and he did nothing, also not surprisingly. Then the Red Raider shot at the Beast of Nurgle on the home objective, killing it, and the purple one shot at the red Great Unclean One, doing 2 damage. And that was the shooting phase. Lilith into the Great Unclean One, Purple Talos into your Great Unclean One there. He is in. Alright, you guys. So starting off in the fight phase, I started with the Witches and Lilith and her squad. They did a total of 3 damage to the Great Unclean One. I was not rolling 6s. and he was rolling saves, actually, surprisingly. I even used Leelith once per battle for extra attacks, but anyway, so that was super sad. Definitely not a good matchup. But what are you gonna do? Then my purple Talos swung on his Great Unclean One up there. I believe he did either 4 damage or 3 damage. He might have come with a wound already.
Yeah, 3 damage. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then he was able to swing, so he swung with a Beast of Nurgle on the racks in the middle. I think the first one actually didn't do anything.
Yeah, it didn't.
Then I swung with my Talos, killing off the Sloppy Bile Piper, wiping out another unit thing. Now that Talos is permanently empowered, which is pretty cool. And then he swung again with his blue Beast of Nurgle, killing 1 rack off, actually. Which was good, I guess, for him. Anyway, and then he swung with his Great Unclean Ones. He did 6 damage to my purple Talos, and he killed 4 of my witches with his other Great Unclean One. And that was the combat phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, now I'm actually getting just a consistent amount of points. 4 for behind enemy lines, 4 for cleanse, and 10 for primary, so basically max points across the board here. So it has kept me ahead, just barely, but yeah, so I should be able to keep doing this as the situation stands currently. But, you know, we'll see what happens. And yeah, so that was points.
So for my 4th turn, I drew Area Denial, which is take the center, and Defend Stronghold. So I'm going to automatically get Defend Stronghold. It's just the Area Denial, which is the center. That's a bit of a problem. So Rodriguez moved up to intercept the Talos. My Nurgling Swarm at the top right moved towards to help the Great Unclean One. The blue Plague Bearer squad ran 5 extra inches, so they moved 10 towards all these enemies. And so essentially what's happening is I was able to gain an extra CP because I did kill 7 models in the last turn, and Epidemius brings me another one. And that was the movement phase. Alright, so for the shooting phase, Rodriguez fired into the Talos, did 1 damage to it. The Great Unclean One, green one, fired into the witches, killed a bunch of them. Then the Great Unclean One, the green one, fired into the Talos and killed him with his Putrid Vomit, didn't even need the Plague Flail. And that was the shooting phase. Also, at the end of the movement phase, each Great Unclean One weakened. The red one weakened the Talos' toughness by 1, but now it's dead. And the green Great Unclean One weakened the Rack's toughness in the center of the map by 1. Right, so for charges, Rodriguez charged the Talos. I didn't even bother rolling. He was right there. Then after that, whatchamacallit? Epidemius and his squad multi-charged the red Scourges and the green Scourges. So I spent 1 CP to give him the ability to advance and charge. And then I rolled a 6, so they made it in. And he overwatched for 1 CP. Apparently it was all flamers. And was able to kill 2 of my guys. After that, my red Great Unclean One charged the purple Raider, made it in, and the Nurglings charged the witches, and that was the charge phase. Alright, so for the fight phase, Epidemius really whiffed on his attacks, didn't really do anything, and neither did the 2 Plague Bearers who swung on the green squad, so they whiffed entirely. The rest of the Plague Bearers was able to finish off the 2 guys, just barely. Then my Great Unclean One, red, swung onto the vehicle and killed it outright, did 13 damage to it. It didn't explode. Rodriguez then swung and deleted the Talos that was there. Then the Nurgling Swarm charged in and did like 4 wounds to the witches, and then the Great Unclean One, green one, finished off Lilith Hesperax. After that, my Great Unclean One piled into the green the purple Cabalites. They swung back, did absolutely nothing. His rack swung on my Beast of Nurgle. They do stuff, but they don't do 7 wounds to kill one. And my Beast of Nurgle swung back and killed 2 of them. And yeah, and that was my fight phase. So for points, Arrow Denial has not happened yet, but I did get 10 points for primary, and Defend Stronghold, I got this as an easy 3. And that was my turn. So due to time constraints and stuff, we decided to call it a draw because it could go either way with a few dice rolls. So we're not fully sure how it could go, based entirely off luck. We did some theory hammering afterwards, and it's a bit inconclusive even still afterwards. But it is a very close game. Once the Great Unclean One showed up, then things started changing heavily. But MVP, LVP. So LVPs. So the Plague Drones and the Poxbringer. Proxbringer showed up, did nothing, died. Plague Drones. Got my Beast of Nurgle to reroll wound once and died. They barely killed anything. They killed, like, combined from all 6 models from 2 squads, I think like 3 models. So the overall, the LVP will probably be the Plague Drones because they cost 120 each, and they're not good enough. Sadly, they're not that good. I'm disappointed in them. And MVP. The Beasts of Nurgle were a force of nature. In the center, they just would not die. The other ones were strategically useful, doing their things. They took the back objective. Then the Great Unclean Ones themselves, specifically the red one, just absolutely butchered so many enemies. Killed 5 of those Scourges, 1 vehicle, 1 Talos, and probably would have butchered that a good portion of that purple squad that he was fighting at the very end. So, like, and the other Great Unclean Ones also really picked up a lot of damage, or did a lot of damage, and they weathered a lot. Like, this red Great Unclean One actually took a lot of things. He took a Dark Lance to the face and only took 1 wound from it. But overall, I'm going to have to say the Beasts of Nurgle, because they were the ones getting me the most points. Beasts of Nurgle will be my MVP. Well, that's me. What about you?
Well, LVP is definitely the Ravager. It literally did nothing the entire game. It didn't sit on an objective. It didn't kill anything. I'm pretty sure every single shot it made missed or didn't wound. So straight up LVP. Closely followed by the Witches and Lilith Hesperax. Now, they could have done a lot. I assume they would have actually been able to pull off more damage against the Great Unclean One. But the 6s to wound, I guess, was it. But of course, I also didn't roll any 6s. So I could have rolled a bunch of 6s. I don't know. But I mean, they had a ridiculous amount of attacks. Like, I think all in all, it was like 50 attacks that that squad pumped out with Lilith. But they would have done much better against like infantry or lighter toughness units. So that was really it. But so she's a second runner-up because she did nothing the whole game, and then they all just died. Now MVPs are a couple of units. The Rax and the Homunculus in the middle. They literally just sat there. That Feel No Pain really did a number. The Scourges, those guys actually killed off quite a bit of things. The Dark Lance ones, the other ones, they all just kind of, mostly the Dark Lance ones actually. But and then the Heliarchs, the Hellions, they got me secondary points the whole game. So I think it's the Scourges, the Dark Lance Scourges, as my MVP, but I think the closest follow-up would be the Hellions.
Alright. And just a small thing I will say, I believe actually out of Lilith and Ravager, the Ravager is the true LVP, because at least Lilith held back my Great Unclean One from pouring into the center for 2 turns. Or 2 rounds of combat and stuff like that. So
that's just because he didn't have enough attacks to kill them in the first turn.
Yeah, but so like the Ravager didn't do anything. Lilith at least stalled. So that's what I think. All right, then for the game. Overall thoughts on the game. I wanted to play guard this turn, but some weird bug was happening with Yellow Scribe, and I had like only a few minutes to figure it out. And so I went with back to Nurgle, but the points changes really changed things up. If I want to make these guys competitive, I'm going to have to drop the Plague Drones, at least get rid of 1 squad, probably bring something else. I feel like Horticulus Slimex would be a better dude for this. But overall, essentially, the points drops have made me able to bring a lot more dudes that can be able to hold off more objectives, do more things on the side, but it's still a mixed bag. The Great Unclean Ones are the damage dealers. Everyone else is meh at best, except the Beasts of Nurgle. They're meh and a sponge. But as far as the mission goes, I got lucky with all the card draws. I was able to do almost every single mission. I was able to have good presence on the board. Deep striking, going behind enemy lines, do all that stuff. The control of the center of the board did not hurt me because you pushed so far into my zone. I had Shadow of the Warp, so my Great Unclean One was super tanky, super tough. Yeah. Overall, this game was very interesting, but like, I'm really seeing the flaws of the biggest weakness is freaking plague drones. And I still have 6 of them to paint. Well, yeah. So that's what I think. It was a good game. It was a good close game. Some things were better than others. I gotta paint you as well. So what about you? What do you think?
So for me, I enjoyed it. I actually really liked them. Now I will say, so I think with Dark Eldar, or Drukari, their matchups are really important. So they have a lot of anti-infantry weapons, which in 9th edition they had, it was like a poison or whatever. So that's kind of a big deal. So like most of your army was not infantry. Mm-hmm. So most of them had tough or strength 2 guns or strength 3 weapons. But they rely on that anti-infantry to actually do their damage. And so I think that was a big challenge. Now the Scourges with the Dark Lances, so they have some heavy shooting and they have some heavier damage units. And so I think knowing that to pair it better in the future is the better choice, because they're all super mobile. And so I think that would be the best way to handle it. More in being more aware of what you want to do as far as matchups go.
Yeah.
Because if they have an anti-infantry thing on their weapon, it means if it fights anything else, it's going to be garbage.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened with the witches. They had all this anti-infantry stuff, but they were fighting a great unclean one, and so it did not work out for them.
Yeah, there's also that squad that fired at my Nurglings and needed 5s to wound them because they're swarm and not infantry.
Yeah, so that was really bad. And so I guess that's the biggest thing I found. So like the racks and stuff with the homunculus have a 4-up feel no pain, so they can really hold on to stuff. I wouldn't have thought that they could have, but they did. Grotesques actually survived the whole game, and so I think they actually have an interesting mix of tough units, really high damage units, and then like anti-infantry units. And so I think just learning how you want to mix that, I think, is great. For the Drukari, I think the game was good. It really, I had the damage and weapons to deal with the Great Unclean Ones, but literally the Ravager never did anything. And so while I was clearing out other chunks of units, the Great Unclean Ones were the ones that were really kind of pushing stuff around, because the units that had the damage never actually made it through on the damage, just because they have the 4-ups and the 4-ups, and so that was really unfortunate. But all in all, I thought it was a good game.
Yeah. All right then. So, GG. That's it for now, and no idea what we'll be playing next week, but we'll get to that when we get to that. All right. Bye.